The blind date's empty, until a poor girl sat down by mistake and changed the cold CEO life forever. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The restaurant buzzed with the soft hum of conversation and the delicate clinking of silverware. Golden lights floated above each table, turning every glass and plate into a piece of art. To most guests, it was just another elegant night in downtown New York City. But for Emma Brooks, it felt like she had stepped into a world she did not belong to. Her reflection in the window reminded her of that truth. The hem of her second-hand dress had been stitched twice, her heels were slightly uneven, and her palms were damp from nerves. She took a shaky breath, whispering to herself, "You promised Jenny you would do this." Emma scanned the room, clutching her phone. "Table 7, she murmured, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the music. At the far end of the room, a man sat alone. His dark suit fit perfectly, his posture was calm but powerful, his attention fixed on his phone. That must be him, she thought, her blind date, Kevin. Gathering every ounce of courage, she walked over with a bright but nervous smile. "Hi, you must be Kevin. I am Emma. It is nice to meet you." The man looked up, startled. For a moment, his sharp blue eyes flickered with confusion. His name was not Kevin. His name was Liam Parker. He had been waiting for a business associate who had just canceled their meeting. But something about the way this nervous woman stood there, her voice trembling but warm, stopped him from correcting her. Liam studied her for a heartbeat longer, then offered a faint smile. "Right," he said softly. "Blind dates are something else, are they not?" Emma laughed awkwardly and slipped into the chair across from him. "They really are. Jenny has been trying to set me up for months. I am terrible at this kind of thing, but she insisted." Liam watched her fidget with her napkin. Her sincerity was disarming. He found himself curious, an unfamiliar feeling for a man who spent most of his life surrounded by people who wanted something from him. "So, Emma," he said, leaning slightly forward, "what do you do?" "I am a waitress," she answered quickly, cheeks flushing. "It is not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Most of them, anyway." "What about you?" "I work in technology," he replied, keeping his tone casual. "Technology?" she repeated, brightening. "Like apps or computers? That sounds amazing. I can barely make my phone stop freezing." He chuckled quietly, the first genuine laugh he had felt in weeks. "Something like that?" The tension between them softened. She told him about long shifts at the diner, about customers who tipped in kind words instead of dollars, and about her dream of one day opening her own little art studio. Her hands moved as she spoke, sketching invisible lines in the air. Liam listened, smiling more than he meant to. "You are not what I expected," Emma said suddenly. "Jenny said you were quiet, maybe a little cold, but you are actually very easy to talk to." Liam tilted his head, amused. "You are easy to talk to, too." Emma's cheeks warmed. For a brief, beautiful moment, it felt like the world had shrunk to that small table. The soft light, the laughter, the hum of a string quartet somewhere in the background. Then her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. "Hey Emma, I am at table 7. Looking forward to meeting you. Kevin." The smile faded from her face. Slowly, she looked up at Liam. "You are not Kevin, are you?" she whispered. He hesitated, guilt flickering in his eyes. "No," he said quietly. Her heart sank. "Oh my God." She pushed her chair back, face burning. "I am so sorry. I sat at the wrong table." "Wait, Emma," Liam began, standing too. But she was already reaching for her coat. "This is so embarrassing," she muttered, half running toward the door. Liam watched her go, the soft chime of the restaurant door fading behind her. For a long moment, he stood there, unsure why the absence of a stranger suddenly felt so heavy. Outside, Emma hurried down the wet sidewalk, the cold wind biting her cheeks. She could still feel his eyes on her, that soft voice saying, "Wait." But she could not bear to turn back. Inside the restaurant, Liam sat again, the untouched glass of wine glinting in front of him. He had met hundreds of people, partners, investors, socialites, but none had looked at him the way she did, as if he were just a man, not a millionaire. And though he did not know her last name or where she worked, one thought echoed in his mind. He had to see her again. The city lights outside Emma's window blinked like distant fireflies. She sat on the edge of her small apartment couch, her cheeks still flushed from the memory of that disastrous dinner. The sound of rain tapped gently against the glass, matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Jenny, her best friend and roommate, looked up from her laptop, eyebrows raised. "That bad?" Jenny asked, setting her computer aside. Emma groaned, burying her face in a throw pillow. "Worse. I sat at the wrong table. I talked for almost an hour to a total stranger, thinking he was Kevin." "Huh?" Jenny's mouth fell open before a laugh slipped out. "You did not." "I did," Emma said, muffled against the pillow. "And the worst part? He was actually nice. Not just polite, genuinely nice. And when I realized my mistake, I just ran out like a complete idiot." Jenny smiled softly. "Maybe it is not the end of the world. You said he was nice, right? Maybe he thought it was funny." Emma shook her head. "He probably thinks I am insane. Or worse, one of those girls trying to flirt with random rich guys in fancy restaurants." Jenny leaned back on the couch. "Em, you are overthinking it. Everyone makes mistakes." "Yeah, but not everyone accidentally crashes a stranger's dinner." The room fell quiet except for the hum of the city outside. A leaky faucet dripped in the kitchen. Emma rubbed her forehead, sighing. "I just wanted one normal date, Jen. One chance to feel like maybe my life is not completely off track." "Oh," Jenny's voice softened. "You are doing your best, Em. Working double shifts, still painting when you can, that is more than most people manage." Emma's eyes wandered to the small sketchbook lying on the coffee table. The corners were bent, pages filled with pencil drawings, city skylines, park benches, faces of strangers she passed during her shifts. She picked it up gently. "One day," she whispered, "I will have my own little studio. Big windows, white walls, music playing while I paint all day." Jenny smiled. "You will. You just need the right person to see what you can do." Across town, in a penthouse high above the same rain-soaked streets, Liam Parker stood at his floor-to-ceiling window. The New York skyline glittered beneath him, but tonight, the view did not soothe him as it usually did. He could still hear her voice, the awkward laugh, the nervous energy, the warmth that had cut through the polished emptiness of his world. He ran a hand through his hair, letting out a quiet sigh. "Emma Brooks," he said to himself, testing the sound of her name. His assistant, Claire, knocked gently on the open door. "You called off your dinner meeting and your morning conference. Should I reschedule?" Liam turned toward her. "No, leave it clear." Claire hesitated. "Everything all right? You seem distracted." He almost smiled. "I met someone by accident. She thought I was someone else." Claire raised an eyebrow. "And?" "She was real," Liam said simply. "No pretenses, no agenda, just real." Claire crossed her arms, amused. "You, of all people, believe in accidents now?" Liam looked back at the city. Maybe some accidents are meant to happen. Later that night, as Emma washed dishes in the dim light of her kitchen, her phone buzzed with a reminder, rent due in 3 days. Her chest tightened. She glanced at her tired reflection in the window. Dark circles, chipped nail polish, hair pulled into a messy bun. "You are fine," she whispered to herself. "You always figure it out." She stacked the dishes, then opened her sketchbook again, flipping to the unfinished drawing of a man's face. His expression was calm, but guarded. She had started it that afternoon before the blind date. Now, she found herself shading in sharper lines, darkening his eyes, trying to capture the look Liam had given her across that table, half curious, half unreadable. When she finished, she stared at it for a long moment before closing the book. "You are just a stranger," she told the drawing quietly. Nothing more. But as she turned off the lights and crawled into bed, the thought she had been trying to ignore lingered. For the first time in months, Emma fell asleep, not worrying about bills or her next shift, but wondering if she would ever see the man from Table 7 again. In another part of the city, Liam sat at his desk, the lights from the skyline reflecting off the glass surface. He opened his laptop, searching through his restaurant receipts, then paused when he found her name on the reservation list. Emma Brooks, Table 7. For a long moment, he simply stared at it. Then, almost without thinking, he whispered, "Let us see where fate takes this mistake." The next morning arrived with gray clouds hanging low over the city. Emma slipped into her uniform at the diner, tying her apron with a sigh. The smell of burnt toast and fresh coffee filled the air. Another ordinary day. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and forced a smile as the first customers walked in. "Morning, sweetheart," said Ruth, the elderly cook flipping pancakes behind the counter. "Rough night?" Emma gave a tired chuckle. "Something like that. Men trouble?" "Worse. I embarrassed myself in front of one I was not even supposed to meet." Ruth laughed, sliding a plate toward her. "Then that is a new one for the books." Emma smiled faintly and grabbed her order pad. She had learned to move through her shifts with practiced grace, balancing plates, refilling coffee cups, pretending not to hear the same city complaints on repeat. Yet, behind every polite smile, her mind drifted back to last night. The restaurant's warm lights, his voice, the way he had listened. By noon, her sketchbook peeked from her bag beside the counter. During her short break, she flipped it open and started sketching quickly, the pencil moving almost on its own. She drew the curve of a jawline, the faint tilt of a smile. She shaded the eyes, careful, steady, as if drawing could pull him closer again. Ruth leaned over, wiping her hands on a towel. "That is good, Em. Real good." "Who is he?" Emma hesitated. "No one. Just someone I met by mistake." "Sweetheart, mistakes have a funny way of turning into stories worth telling." Emma smiled but did not answer. She tucked the sketchbook away as the bell over the door jingled, signaling a new customer. Across town, Liam Parker sat in his office, surrounded by sleek glass walls and endless views of the skyline. But his thoughts were far from numbers and contracts. The name, Emma Brooks, glowed softly on his computer screen. He had found the diner's address listed next to a payment entry from her card. Claire, his assistant, stepped in holding a folder. "The investors' meeting is at 10. Are you ready, sir?" "Not today, Claire," he said quietly. "Cancel it." She blinked. "That is the third one this week." He looked out the window, his expression unreadable. Sometimes the things that matter are not on the calendar. A few hours later, the diner door swung open with the sound of rain behind it. Emma turned, ready to greet whoever walked in, and froze. The man from the restaurant, the stranger she had mistaken for Kevin, was standing there. The world seemed to still for a heartbeat. Liam removed his coat, water dripping onto the floor. "Hi," he said, his voice calm but warm. "I hope I am not interrupting." Emma's heart raced. "You," she breathed. "What are you doing here?" "I owed you an explanation," Liam replied. "You looked too embarrassed to let me give it last time." Ruth's eyes darted between them, a knowing grin spreading across her face. "Well, I am going to check the back storage. Take your time, kids." She disappeared before Emma could protest. Emma crossed her arms, trying to appear composed. "You let me think you were someone else." "Why?" He paused, meeting her gaze. "Because for once, someone talked to me without knowing who I was. It felt honest." Her expression softened despite herself. "You could have told me." "I should have," he admitted. "And I am sorry." Silence hung for a moment, filled only by the faint hiss of the coffee machine. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small napkin. On it, carefully folded, was a torn corner of paper. "You left this on the table," he said. "A sketch. I did not mean to keep it, but I could not throw it away either." Emma took it gently. It was her quick sketch from that night, the restaurant table, his glass, the faint outline of his hand resting on the linen. She had forgotten all about it. "I draw to stay sane," she said softly, "to remember that life can still be beautiful." He smiled faintly. "Then you are an artist." She laughed under her breath. "Hardly. Just a waitress who likes to dream." "Oh, dreams build more than companies," Liam said. "Sometimes they rebuild people." Ruth reappeared just as the rain stopped. "Emma, your break is over, sweetheart." Emma nodded, tucking the napkin safely into her apron. "I should get back to work." Liam stood, his expression thoughtful. "Then I will let you. But this time, I am the one who will find you again." She blinked. "Why?" Because mistakes deserve a second chance. No. He placed a tip on the counter far too generous and left before she could argue. The bell above the door chimed as he disappeared into the gray afternoon. Emma stood still, her pulse fluttering. Ruth leaned close and whispered, "Told you, mistakes turn into stories." That night, as Emma closed up the diner, she unfolded the napkin again. The sketch looked different, now alive somehow. She smiled to herself, unaware that miles away, Liam Parker sat in his penthouse, holding her torn receipt, tracing her handwriting with his thumb. Both of them caught in the quiet pull of the same mistake that fate refused to let end. 2 days later, the city woke to a rare stretch of sunlight after a week of cold rain. Emma's morning began the same way it always did, coffee in a chipped mug, the hum of traffic outside her window, and a quick glance at the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. She tied her hair back, slipped her sketchbook into her bag, and headed out for another shift at the diner. By noon, the lunch crowd had slowed. Emma wiped down the tables, humming softly to the old jukebox tune playing in the corner. That was when she noticed him again, Liam Parker, standing outside the window, waiting patiently as if he had been there for a while. Her breath caught. He stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming. "You said I could find you," he said, his tone light but sincere. Emma blinked, flustered. "I did not mean that literally. Maybe I took it that way," Liam replied with a quiet smile. "Would you let me buy you coffee?" Off the clock this time. Her shift ended in 15 minutes. She hesitated, then nodded. "All right. Just coffee." They walked 2 blocks to a small cafe tucked between an old bookstore and a flower shop. Unlike the fancy restaurant where they first met, this place smelled of roasted beans and warm bread. Sunlight spilled through the windows, painting soft gold across the wooden tables. For a while, they just talked. No pretense, no awkward silence. Emma told him about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about moving to New York City with her mom after her father passed away, about working 2 jobs while studying art online. Liam listened closely, occasionally smiling in a way that felt genuine, not corporate. He spoke little about himself, but when she pressed, he said only, "Work keeps me busy, too busy sometimes." "You look like someone who forgets to eat when working," she said with a grin. He laughed softly. "Guilty." As they left the cafe, Emma noticed the way he held the door for an older woman, the way he looked up at the skyline like it was new every time. It surprised her. He did not act like the cold businessman she might have imagined. They stopped at a small park nearby. A street artist had set up a canvas, painting the skyline in quick strokes. Emma's eyes lit up. "I used to paint outside like that," she said, "until life got in the way." Liam turned to her. "Maybe life is waiting for you to pick the brush back up." She smiled shyly. "Maybe." "Oh." Before parting, Liam reached into his coat pocket and handed her something small, a folded brochure for a weekend community art fair. "They are offering booth spaces for local artists," he said. "You should try." Emma looked at him, half amused, half moved. "Are you trying to be my life coach now?" "No," he said softly. "Just someone who believes you can do more than survive." That night, Emma sat at her tiny kitchen table, the brochure open beside her sketchbook. Her pencil danced over the paper again, this time drawing the park, the cafe, and Liam standing in the light with that quiet smile. Across town, Liam leaned against the railing of his balcony, the city lights glimmering below. For the first time in years, he was not thinking about profit margins or contracts. He was thinking about a girl who painted dreams she could barely afford to chase, and how he wanted to see what she might create if someone simply believed in her. Neither of them realized it yet. But that afternoon coffee had set something in motion, something real, fragile, and quietly unstoppable. The next few weeks slipped by like pages turning in a book Emma did not want to end. Every few days, Liam stopped by the diner just before closing. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes a new art supply, a set of brushes, a small box of watercolor paints, but mostly, he brought quiet company. One evening, after her shift, he waited outside in the cold. "You look exhausted," he said. "I am," she admitted, smiling. "But I am also happy." They walked together through the park, the one with the street artist. The trees were bare now, branches dusted with early snow. Emma carried her sketchbook in her arms like something fragile, Liam noticed. "You started painting again," he said. She nodded. The fair you told me about it is next weekend. I signed up. His eyes brightened. Good. You did it. I almost backed out, she confessed. I thought, who would care about my art? But then I remembered what you said, that I can do more than survive. He smiled softly. You listened. They stopped by a small bridge overlooking the frozen pond. Emma opened her sketchbook and showed him a new piece, an unfinished portrait of him. The lines were gentle, the eyes thoughtful. You drew me? He asked quietly. I draw what makes me think, she said. For a long moment, he said nothing. The wind carried only the sound of the city around them. Then he reached out and traced a corner of the page with his gloved hand. It is beautiful, he said. You are beautiful. Her heart skipped. Do not say things like that unless you mean them. I mean every word, he answered. Before she could reply, her phone buzzed a message from her landlord reminding her that the rent was still overdue. The moment cracked like thin glass. She looked down, embarrassed. Reality always knows when to interrupt, does it not? Liam wanted to ask what was wrong, but the look in her eyes stopped him. He sensed her pride, the quiet wall she kept between her and the world. As they parted that night, he said gently, If you ever need help, Emma, do not shut the door before knocking first. She smiled faintly. I will try. When she reached home, she looked again at her drawing of him. For the first time, she added color soft gold in the background, like the light he carried with him everywhere he went. The night of the charity gala arrived sooner than Emma expected. The art fair had gone well better than she could have dreamed, and she was still glowing from the experience when Jenny burst into their apartment with a borrowed dress draped over her arm. You are coming with me, Jenny announced. My cousin works catering for some fancy tech company event. They need extra servers, and they pay double. Emma hesitated. A tech company? Yeah, Parker Technologies or something. You will blend right in with that smile of yours. Come on, it is just one night. The name made her pulse quicken. Parker Technologies. Liam's company. She had known he worked in technology, but she had never asked more. She had never imagined he was that Parker. Still, she needed the money. And it was too late to back out now. Hours later, Emma stood in the glittering ballroom, under a chandelier that looked like falling stars. The crowd shimmered in evening gowns and tuxedos, laughter echoing against marble walls. She kept her head down, balancing a tray of champagne glasses, praying he would not be here. But fate had other plans. When the lights dimmed, the announcer's voice boomed through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor and the host of tonight's charity gala, Mr. Liam Parker. Oh? The room erupted in applause. Emma froze mid-step. On the stage, Liam appeared in a tailored black suit, confident and composed, the same man who had walked her through the park, who had carried coffee to her diner, now standing before a sea of flashing cameras. Her hands trembled. The glasses on her tray clinked softly. Jenny, from across the room, mouthed, Are you okay? Emma's breath hitched. He lied. The words screamed in her mind, even though he had never actually said who he was. He had let her believe he was ordinary, one of the countless dreamers wandering the city. Liam began his speech, thanking donors and artists, talking about creativity and hope. Then, as if drawn by instinct, his gaze swept the room and found her. Their eyes met across the crowd. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. Emma turned away before he could step down. She fled through the side doors into the cold night air, her pulse racing, her chest tight. The truth was out now, and every word he had spoken suddenly felt like another secret wrapped in kindness. Back inside, Liam excused himself from the stage. He knew that look in her eyes hurt, disbelief, betrayal. He had built his empire on strategy and control, yet in one moment, with one woman, everything had slipped away. The cold air bit at Emma's cheeks as she hurried down the marble steps outside the hotel. Her heels clicked against the pavement, uneven and fast. The night that had begun with glitter and music now felt like a cruel joke. She turned the corner, pulling the pins from her hair, her chest tight with a mix of anger and humiliation. Behind her, the echo of footsteps grew louder. Emma, wait! Liam's voice called out, firm but desperate. She spun around, eyes blazing. Do not come near me right now. He stopped a few feet away, breath visible in the frosty air. Please, let me explain. Explain what? She snapped. That you are a billionaire who plays pretend for fun? That you let me talk about rent and second-hand shoes while you live in a penthouse that touches the clouds? He flinched, but his voice stayed steady. I never meant to deceive you. You never meant not to either, she said, her voice trembling. You knew who I was. You watched me struggle, and you said nothing. Because I wanted to be seen for who I am, he said quietly, not for what I own. Emma let out a bitter laugh. You got that. I saw you as someone honest, someone kind, but you were never real with me. He took a careful step closer. I was real with you, Emma, every moment. She shook her head. No. The man I met in that diner, the one who bought me coffee and listened like the world stopped for a minute, that man does not exist. He was just another rich man playing savior. Her voice broke on the last word, and she turned to go. But Liam reached out, not to stop her, just to speak before she disappeared. Emma, the first night I met you, I was tired of being everyone's idea of Liam Parker. You reminded me what it felt like to just be human again. His words hung in the night, soft but heavy. She wanted to believe him, but her heart was already too bruised. Then maybe you should have stayed human, she whispered, before you decided to turn me into your lesson. She walked away, tears stinging her eyes, leaving him standing beneath the city's cold glow. For days after, Emma kept to herself. She skipped shifts at the diner, ignoring Jenny's questions. The art fair application sat untouched on her desk, next to a pile of unopened letters. She could not bring herself to draw anymore. Every page in her sketchbook felt like a lie now. Across the city, Liam sat alone in his office. The skyline stretched endlessly, but he barely noticed it. His assistant had stopped asking questions. He had canceled meetings, turned down interviews, let his phone ring unanswered. On his desk, framed and untouched, sat the little napkin with Emma's sketch, the one she had left behind that night at the restaurant. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, You said mistakes can turn into stories. I just never wanted ours to end like this. Oh. In her apartment, Emma lay awake, the city humming outside her window. For the first time since meeting him, she felt the weight of something she could not name. It was not anger anymore. It was loss. And though she did not know it yet, that feeling was shared across the city in a high-rise office where a man who had everything realized he had finally found the one thing he could not buy back: trust. A full week passed before Emma found the courage to step outside again. The winter air had grown sharper, and the city's lights blurred through a veil of snow. She walked without purpose, her hands deep in her coat pockets, the cold biting at her fingers. Her feet led her, almost by instinct, to the small art studio she passed every morning on her way to work. The windows were frosted, but through the glass, she could see a sign taped to the door. Private Exhibit, The Art of Emma Brooks. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. The letters looked hand-painted, careful, and deliberate. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. She pushed the door open slowly. Warm light spilled across the wooden floor, and soft piano music floated through the air. The small studio was filled with her paintings, her sketches, her watercolors, even the half-finished portraits she had thrown away in frustration. Someone had found them, framed them, and placed them under spotlights like treasures. At the center of the room, a note waited on an easel. Her name was written across the top in bold, steady handwriting she knew too well. I should have been honest from the beginning. You once told me that art makes people feel seen. You made me feel that way. I am sorry for the way I hurt you. These walls belong to you now, your gallery, your dream. Whether you forgive me or not, I wanted you to have this chance. Liam Parker. Emma's vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. She moved from canvas to canvas, her fingers trembling as they brushed over the frames. Each painting carried a piece of her, her exhaustion, her hope, her quiet belief that even small beauty mattered. Jenny appeared behind her, holding a cup of coffee. He came to me, she said softly. Asked where you kept your old paintings. He said you would never let him help unless it meant something real. Emma's voice shook. He did all this? Jenny nodded. He said love is not about fixing someone. It is about believing in who they already are. The words broke something open in Emma's chest. For months, she had painted in silence, never believing anyone would care. And now, every brushstroke she had ever made filled an entire room because someone had refused to let her disappear. She turned toward the doorway when she heard footsteps. Liam stood there, wearing no suit, no pretense, just a dark coat dusted with snow. His expression was uncertain, almost fragile. "I did not want to show up uninvited," he said quietly. "But I wanted you to see it before the world did." Emma took a slow breath, her heart trembling somewhere between forgiveness and fear. "Why?" she asked. "Why go through all this trouble?" "Because I wanted to prove that what I said was real," Liam replied. "That you mattered to me long before you knew my name." Silence stretched between them, but this time it was gentle. She stepped closer, close enough to see the regret in his eyes, the kind that words could not fix but actions could begin to heal. "This does not erase what happened," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but maybe it can be the start of something honest." Emma looked around the room again, at her dreams finally standing on their own feet, then back at him. "Then let us start here," she said softly, and for the first time in a long time, she smiled, not the kind she wore for customers or friends, but one that felt like sunlight after a storm. A month later, the small gallery that once belonged to Emma's dreams had become one of the most talked about exhibits in the city. "The Art of Emma Brooks" was written in gold across the window. But what people really came for was the story, the waitress who painted her way out of silence, and the stranger who had believed in her before the world did. That evening, the gallery glowed beneath strings of soft lights. The final night of the exhibit had drawn a gentle crowd, artists, friends, and people who had been touched by her work. Emma moved quietly among them, a simple white dress flowing as she smiled and thanked each guest. The same hands that once served coffee now shook hands with collectors and gallery owners. At the center of the room, beneath a spotlight, hung her newest painting, a familiar table, 2 glasses of wine, and a note resting beside them. The title read, "The Best Mistake." Jenny appeared beside her, beaming. "I hope you know you are living a movie right now," she teased. Emma laughed softly. "It still feels unreal." "Well," Jenny said, nudging her, "if life ever starts to feel too quiet again, you can always thank that blind date for being empty." Emma smiled, her gaze drifting toward the doorway. "Maybe I already have." Outside, the sound of light footsteps echoed against the pavement. When she turned, Liam stood at the entrance, holding a single white rose. His eyes met hers with the same quiet warmth that had drawn her in from the start. No grand speech, no apology, just truth. He stepped closer, offering the rose. "I heard the artist was taking requests for portraits." Emma tilted her head. "You already have one." He smiled. "Maybe this time we can paint something together." She reached for the rose, her fingers brushing his. "You kept your promise," she said. "You found me again. And I will keep finding you," he replied softly, "as long as you let me." The guests around them began to applaud as the final announcement of the night came over the microphone. "Before we close, a special thank you to Mr. Liam Parker for his support of local artists and his generous donation to the Community Art Scholarship Fund." Emma turned to him, surprise in her eyes. "You did that?" He shrugged lightly. "You once said art makes people feel seen. I figured we could help more people feel that way." Tears shimmered at the edge of her smile. "You really are impossible." He took her hand. "Only because you are worth every impossible thing." "Oh?" As the crowd began to disperse, soft music filled the room. Liam led her to the center floor, beneath the same golden light that had once framed her paintings. They began to dance slow, quiet, steady. Around them, the gallery seemed to breathe with life, filled with warmth instead of judgment, with laughter instead of noise. For Emma, it felt like a full circle. The girl who had walked into the wrong dinner now stood in the right place, in the right moment, with the right person. Liam leaned in, whispering against her hair. "To the best mistake we ever made." She smiled against his shoulder. "To the best mistake." And as the music swelled, they kept dancing beneath the soft glow of her art, their silhouettes blending into the colors she had once painted alone. 2 people who had finally learned that love, like art, is not about perfection. It is about courage, forgiveness, and finding beauty in every broken line.